Let's welcome in Jonathan Jones to talk about Rob Gronkowski announcing his retirement. Yet again, JJ, I think a lot of us thought Tom Brady's back, Gronk is probably going to come back, but instead deciding to call it a career.
I'll tell you what, there were obviously a lot of hopeful folks down in Tampa hoping that Rob Gronkowski would come back and play with Tom Brady here in the 2022 season, hoping to chase another Lombardi down there. And talking with the folks there over the past couple of weeks, it was really split. And the split was some folks telling me, I truly do not know if Rob Gronkowski will come back or not. And some folks sort of hoping, you know what, he was never going to come back for minicamp, mandatory or not. He didn't want to put his body through that. Okay. There were some folks there that kind of hoped that he would be there at the start of training camp, that he had been taking care of himself, that he would be available. And so now here he is retiring for a second time. Amanda, does that mean that he's done playing football? I don't know. You know, he might be a little bit of a boxer, right? A little Sugar Ray in him where, okay, you know what? Actually, I will come back out of retirement. I will not at all be surprised if Rob Gronkowski keeps his body up. If Tampa's looking pretty good, he didn't have to go through training camp, and now Tommy lures him back to give it one more go. Maybe. I'm not going to rule it out. And also, Amanda, you wouldn't say arg, so I'll say arg.
No, I'm not making pirate noises on air, but I appreciate it. Yeah, sure enough, his agent Drew Rosenhaus telling ESPN, it would not surprise me if Tom Brady calls him during the season to come back and Rob answers the call. I mean, the Bucs and Tom Brady with Rob Gronkowski there. I mean, let's talk about their outlook with him not there, though. If he decides, you know what, I'm actually good, what do the Bucs look like without him?
Listen, the Buccaneers really like Cam Brate, and he's a guy who's been in their system for many years. He knows Tom very, very well. And he's the guy who's been waiting to really break out. He was sort of on that trajectory, and then they went out and they got O.J. Howard, and then Tom came to town, and they went out and they got Rob Gronkowski. And so he got sent to the back burner a little bit. But O.J. Howard went to the Buffalo Bills at the start of free agency. Now Gronk not coming back. And so it's the Cam Brate show, at least for right now. They drafted a couple tight ends in the 4th and 6th rounds, respectively, of the draft. You can't really imagine that those guys are going to be out there contributing 700, 800 receiving yards in their rookie season. And so would the Bucs potentially look for a trade partner? I was just texting around with a couple NFL executives. One told me this is not a great position to want to have to trade for. There aren't that many guys who are apparently on the trading block right now at the tight end position. However, there are a couple of very good tight ends, or good to very good tight ends on the free agent market. Number one would be Eric Ebron, former Lions, former Steelers tight end, Colts tight end, and so he's still out there and available. Jared Cook has been around the league for a long, long time in his mid-30s, but can still get the job done, no question about it. Jimmy Graham, one of the best tight ends of the past 15 or so years in the NFL. Certainly his better days are behind him, but he's still out there and available. So those would be the three names that you would look for if you're hoping to get a free agent tight end. But again, and I'll stress this, I know that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that Tom Brady, absolutely believe in Cameron Brate, and he's a guy who has been ready and waiting to break out, just waiting his turn behind one of the all-time greats, if not the great, at the tight end position.
Yeah, let's talk about his legacy here a little bit. 4-time Super Bowl champ, NFL Comeback Player of the Year, a ton of accolades for Gronk there. What does he rank for you at the tight end position all time?
Well, it's difficult just because the tight end position has changed over time, right? So if you want to take, it's hard to compare him to a Mike Ditka, for example, even though he was the best receiving tight end that the league had ever seen up until his point. When you look at the 100th anniversary team, if you look at guys who have played in the league as long as you and I have been alive, Amanda, it's really just Gronk and Tony Gonzalez. And there are only, I think, 5 tight ends on that top 100 team. You have John Mackey and you had Ditka, as I mentioned, Kellen Winslow. So that's really who he's competing against. When you consider what he was able to do as a receiver, it's incredible. When you consider what he was able to do as a receiving tight end in the postseason, also incredible. But also his blocking, which we don't have the perfect stat for that. But when you want to say, all right, who's the best blocking tight end? Who's the best receiving tight end? Who did both at the highest level? I think without question it's Rob Gronkowski. And then who did it not only at the highest level in the regular season, who also did it in the postseason, who got the job done when he needed to get the job done to win rings. Again, Rob Gronkowski. So if you want to make him your number one tight end based off of that criteria, you're not going to hear an argument from me.
Gronk writing a very lengthy statement on social media saying in college he was asked to write about his dream job, and he claims that he said that he wanted to play for the Bucs. If Gronk were to not stay retired, would it be the Bucs and no one else? Could we potentially see him on another team? What do you think about his future?
It is hard to imagine that he would be with another team. He knows Tom, he knows the system, obviously there with Byron Leftwich. And so it's almost impossible for me to imagine that he would be going elsewhere if he does not stay retired. Certainly if he decides to break his retirement in the middle of the season, the Buccaneers are obviously going to hold on to his rights. I don't think that they would give them up very easily to another team if he wanted to go off and play in, let's say, a Buffalo, for example. So I could see and can really only see if Gronk decides to come out of retirement that he would return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hoping to win yet another Super Bowl with Tommy.
We will see if it sticks. Jonathan Jones, thank you so much for joining us here on HQ to talk about the legacy of Rob Gronkowski and the future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you can hear more about this, likely an emergency pod that will be on Pick Six podcast very soon, talking about Rob Gronkowski announcing his retirement on this Tuesday. Make sure to download and follow. Let's welcome in two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden here. B-Mac, Gronk apparently calling it a career. He put a post on social media thanking everybody for his incredible career there. What do the Bucs look like now without him?
I mean, I think the Buccaneers, they were preparing for life without Gronkowski, just waiting for him to make it official as he did today. And I think they're okay at the tight end position. You got Cameron Brate, who's been a part of the organization for quite some time, has a nice relationship when it comes to catching passes from Tom Brady. They utilize a few draft picks as well on some young guys at the tight end spot. So I think they should be okay. Most importantly, Amanda, when you have Tom Brady still playing high level like football, they're going to be okay when you look at the tight end position. Outside of that, offensively, you still got some experienced guys at the wide receiver spots as well. So they should be okay knowing that number 87, Gronkowski, is now retiring from the game of football.
I'm not sure exactly where you saw the Bucs this upcoming season. Does this knock them down at all? Do you see any movement in your confidence level when it comes to the Bucs? You're shaking your head. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. As long as number 12 is there, my expectations are the same for Tampa, with or without Rob Gronkowski. That is the key denominator for this team, offensively and in totality. When you look at their entire team, is Tom Brady. What we saw from Tom Brady was MVP-like numbers, MVP-like production. Granted, he did not win that award, but he was right there. And one would think we will see similar success for Tom Brady this upcoming year. So me personally, not having Gronkowski clearly will be a nice loss. But will it hamper my expectation for this team when it comes to competing for a playoff spot, when it comes to competing for a championship? No, sir.
B-Mac, let me ask you this. As a former player, when you're looking at retirement, put yourself in Gronk's shoes. I mean, you did it all with Tom Brady with the Patriots, and then you retire, and Brady's now back with the Bucs, and you decide to come back, you get the ring. I mean, is it tough making this decision as a former player? I mean, if you put yourself in Gronk's shoes?
I think the first time he retired, it was tough, right? Because he played for the Patriots, never playing for another organization. And his best pal, football pal, Tom Brady, decides to go to Tampa. And that was an ideal spot for Rob Gronkowski before he became a New England Patriot. If you saw his post that he put on social media, he stated back as a youngster, he wanted to play for Tampa because of the weather, because of where it was located at and things like that. So just being able to get that into his career path was a thing of beauty for him. Now, seeing that he was able to leave the game, come back, and win a championship, I think it's safe to say he's not returning anymore. I think he was able to do everything that he wanted to do in his career, plus more as an individual. And when you look at the total team effort, winning 4 championships in 11 years, he is a Hall of Famer. No questions about that. I think he will be a first ballot. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the more dominating presence we've ever seen at the tight end position. So me personally, this time, Gronkowski will be retired for good. I don't expect to see him come back anytime soon.
So you're telling me Tom Brady picks up the phone and says, Gronk, come on. We got one more in us, dude. We got Tommy and Gronky here, whatever they called themselves. I need you to come back. You're saying he's going to say no to Tom Brady.
It's official. When you put together that lengthy post to basically give everyone your final hoorah with the game of football, it's a wrap. I mean, he did it so well. It was just everything he said was definitely on point. It was emotional. It was real. It's a wrap. I don't see Gronkowski returning to the game of football. And it's probably safe to say he's already in retirement form anyway, because, one thing about Gronk, he loves to party. So he's probably have a heck of a retirement party coming to a city near you.
We saw those beach parties going down in Vegas. Really quick, B-Mac, talk to us about Gronk's legacy, if this is it, for good.
First ballot Hall of Famer, revolutionized the tight end position, 6'6", 270, reliable hands, outstanding route runner for a guy with his size, and the blocking that he displayed. He was actually an extra lineman when it came to getting involved in the blocking assignments. So me personally, I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, look at the playoff numbers. I mean, not just the regular season numbers, but what he did in the playoffs. The most critical times throughout a football season, he was the most productive player. So me personally, his legacy, I think he will go down as one of the all-time greats. The only thing negative you can say about Gronkowski when it comes to the negative side of things was just injuries, little knick-knack injuries here or there. But when he was on the football field, he was a dominating force.
B-Mac, we appreciate it. The next time Gronk throws a party, maybe a retirement party, you get your fancy water, you get out there and have a good time. We'll talk to you soon.
No doubt.
Bryant McFadden, thank you so much for joining us. B-Mac, you saw his shirt, you saw his hat there, has a podcast with his cousin, Patrick Peterson there. Make sure to download and follow incredible interviews as the offseason rolls along. Let's welcome in Dave Richard here. I said we're going to talk about the fantasy angle. We're fired up about a couple different things. But when you heard that Gronk was retiring, when it comes to fantasy, what was the first thought that went through your head?
First thought that went through my head is that I called him a breakout pick in 2011. So I'm giving myself a little pat on the back about a decade later.
2011, yeah.
The second thought I had in my head was that this is the best tight end of all time. If you ask me, and this isn't a fantasy thing, although you can call it a
throw
fantasy
in fantasy
thing.
there too.
He's the best fantasy tight end of all time. He's the best NFL tight end of all time. And he's going to be missed in fantasy drafts. People always get excited to draft Gronk because Gronk's an exciting player with the Gronk spikes and everything else that he did. And I bet those flights on the Bucs plane this year, those charters, not going to be as much fun without Gronkowski around.
Probably not. Where did he rank going into the season?
He was a low-end top 10 fantasy tight end. And partially it was because we weren't sure, A, if he would play, and B, how long he would play. He missed 5 games last year. He gets beat up pretty easily for a guy his size and his age. So that's really where he was. But I drafted him today. I know I shouldn't say this, but I did a draft today.
I heard the mock drafts going on upstairs.
We did a mock draft today. It's not going to count. I took him today, but I took him in round 11. So it's really not that big of a deal. And until there's rumors, like serious rumors, not like what we're talking about today about him coming back, because I don't know if he is. But when those rumors get serious, and they might get serious a month from now, he might pull a Brady, he might come back. We'll start drafting him again as a top 10 tight end.
And that's the thing. Nobody knows. As of right now, it seems very official.
Right.
He seems like I'm good for right now. When it comes to the tight end position in the Bucs, Cameron Brate there. They drafted a couple guys. How are you feeling about Cameron at least?
Maybe I would take a stab on Cameron Brate with one of my last 3 picks on draft day just because he's got this opportunity. And he actually had as many end zone targets last year as Rob Gronkowski did, but he played in 5 more games. Target share was about the same. Obviously, the volume wasn't the same. And this is the next thing that I wanted to point out. 11% of Brady's catches went to Gronk. 15% of Brady's yards went to Gronk. 14% of his touchdowns went to Gronk. That's all on the table now in Tampa Bay. And I'm not necessarily sure that it's going to be a tight end that comes around and takes all of those numbers. I think you're going to see Russell Gage do a lot of work in this offense. That was kind of not their insurance policy. I think he's their insurance policy for Godwin at the beginning of the year, but now he's for sure their insurance policy for Gronk. He's going to see a lot of targets this year. This is a guy that you can take in round 8, 9, 10, and you might end up getting a low-end number 2 fantasy receiver with Russell Gage. Keep that name in mind.
Okay, so Russell Gage, Do those targets get distributed elsewhere with enough to move somebody else a little bit higher?
Well, among the tight ends, Brady will get drafted because he's the tight end in Tampa Bay, but that's the only reason why. Like I said, one of your last 3 picks. And we talked about Gage. The other guy that's going to get a move is going to be Mike Evans.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah,
yes,
I knew
that's
you
where
were.
I was going
I knew
with
it. And so Mike Evans was a top 12 tight end to begin with. This is the dude who gets just as many end zone targets, if not more, than Rob Gronkowski got. Now it's locked in. If Gronk doesn't come back, this is going to be the number 1 guy that Brady looks at inside the 20, inside the 10. Fournette will get a little bit of work too. He's someone that I think people will stabilize as a second-round fantasy running back. But Mike Evans, watch him. He's going to end up being a top 24 wide receiver. People are going to be a little nervous about him, but remember this. He's never not had a 1,000-yard season. He's had a bunch of double-digit touchdown seasons. Another one's on deck.
Where's Tom Brady for you?
He's in Tampa Bay. He's probably a little sad today.
You think so?
Yeah.
He's a little sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was his buddy. You know?
I was wondering if maybe he didn't know, because normally Tom has like these Instagram glory footage
Right.
ready.
And I'm sure there's going to be something coming soon. Let me legitimately answer your question so I'm not a jerk.
Okay.
He's going to be like, I drafted him in that same mock today.
I was going to ask you.
In I think it was round 8. People are going to be a little nervous now to take Brady in. I kind of get it. There are going to be quarterbacks with more upside. Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts. I would expect them all to get drafted ahead of Tom Brady right now. Is it the right call? Yeah, I think it probably is. I just think those guys are a little bit more exciting, but I don't expect there to be a massive nosedive for Brady here statistically. It's probably going to end up being one of the best values on draft day, to be honest.
Something totally unrelated to fantasy that I know we were talking about before we came on.
Yes.
Something that B-Mac and JJ did not touch on.
They didn't
Something you
notice.
noticed.
And I noticed it when Brady made his retirement announcement, and that's what this is with Gronk's announcement. No love for the Patriots. No love for Bill Belichick. No shout out to Robert Kraft. It's all about the Bucs and all about him moving on to that big party at the next stage of his life.
Claims when he was in college he saw himself playing for the Bucs.
Weird, huh?
We'll see. Dave Richard, thank you so much. One member of the very well-known, I was going to call you guys famous fantasy football. Can we call you famous?
No.
I haven't. Go-to people.
I haven't been like recognized in public in a good 2 years.
Okay, well, we'll change that. We'll change
We
that
will.
as the season rolls along. Make sure to download and follow Fantasy Football Today. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.